just as we go. This is, you know what? Here's the best thing, Jay.
What?
This is an episode about improv, and we're improving the show as we go.
That's improv.
When are we not winging it, really?
I have a run of show in my hands, but
You're the only one.
Yeah, you don't need it.
It's fine.
You know what? I'll just ask you guys to say stuff when it's time to say stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
And just point. But just point at the screen so we have to guess. Like
where we are on your screen.
Just point.
Hey,
all right, and now you. Who? You. Oh.
You.
This is the worst episode of Hollywood Squares.
No, it's the best episode. We got the donut doctor up there.
Where's Paul
Nicholas
Lynn?
Here. Do you understand how? All right, we'll get into that in a second. We're live.
Yeah.
Oh, I heard that echo. Did you hear that echo?
It's fine.
I heard a little echo from someone somewhere, but it's not my cans. I fixed them.
I'm muted. It wasn't me. My air
Yeah, it
conditioner's
wasn't
running,
him.
So.
It was definitely. Oh well, let's start the show. How's that?
Yeah.
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 Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Nick, I tried to get a photo of you smiling, but obviously
You know,
you don't smile when you teach.
it looked
often.
like I was on the toilet, but that's fine. That's where I spend the majority of my time.
It was an elevated toilet, though. It was a full-on stool for stool. Hey.
Hey, this is a guitar nerd podcast, not a.
Wow.
There you
Wow.
go.
I'll
Well,
be here all
Mike's
week.
back.
Try the
There
video.
that is.
Mike's back. We're back. We're live. Primetime, episode 103. We've done 103 things. We got Nick with us today. It's going to be awesome. He's going to run through he's going to teach us live. We're doing it live. He's going to teach us some Improv 101, how to make your guitar playing better.
I'm
Nick,
super pumped about this.
I am too. How have you been, buddy? How have you been, Nicholas?
tired, but good. You know,
I know you're like leaving tomorrow to go on tour for another
month
5 years, right?
ish, month and a month. Oh yeah, a little over a month. But it's gonna be super easy. It's just in the U.S.
Who are you playing with now?
This pop artist named Fletcher. It's her
Oh.
last domestic tour for a while, but last show's at the Greek, which is super exciting because I've never played the Greek before. So.
Oh,
I'm
wow.
stoked.
Have you ever played the Greek, Mike?
I've eaten Greek food,
Okay.
and I've been to the Greek.
That was
You've been to
also
the Greek.
my
What show was
I've
at the
never-
Greek?
Oh, but which one wasn't? I've been to a few, but Iron Maiden and Monster Magnet was a good one.
Only thing is they have a 90 decibel limit.
It's so quiet
Yeah.
there.
It's like kind of
It's
bogus
so
to
quiet
play
there.
a show there. It's
It is. It's
Yeah,
like
as well just do an
it's a
acoustic show.
beautiful venue to play at. Like when you're
Yeah.
back of house and you're looking to front of house. It's like it's like a incredible setting when you're watching a show from front of house, looking at the stage. It's beautiful, and then you're like, it's really quiet.
It's funny. It's not at the Greek. It's never the big rock show. It's the medium rock show.
yeah.
You got to
Yeah.
kind of like bring it down a little.
Nick, what does your tour setup look like? What guitars are you taking on this tour?
I'm not entirely sure yet. We still have a couple days of like production rehearsals to kind of flesh everything out, but it's looking like I try to keep it as dumb simple as possible. It's kind of my pet peeve when someone brings like 18 guitars out on tour with them. I'm like, if I can do 99% of the show on one guitar, great. You know, we're still deciding on some keys of songs, which might influence like I need a guitar that's tuned to E flat or drop D, or which parts of the show are going to be acoustic. There's a second guitar player now, so we're still kind of divvying up all the parts. So I have no idea what my setup looks like so far.
Do you usually play Kemper though?
Yeah, I do.
I mean, you keep it
Just
simple though,
because
and it
it's-
sounds fantastic.
It just keeps it so simple, and the way I have it set up is it's triggered by like the click in the computer, so I can be on wireless guitar and it will just change my sound during the chorus to the overdrive patch, and then on the verse it'll change it for me. So I can be like running around the stage like a chicken, and my sounds will be changing.
That's
You
right.
know, it's pretty interesting. Maybe we should have Nick back on for another episode and like do a deep dive on rig, because or maybe we could do this a few times, a few different ways. It's the same thing with Bo Burchell, right? And the Seosin guys. They're using quad cortex, and it's the same thing. Everything's programmed, right?
Or Mark Seal uses, I think, Axe Effects.
Axe Effects. Man, we could actually do a show where we have a bunch of people in and we can kind of
For guitar nerds who don't know what we're talking about right now, and it's okay if you don't.
modelers.
These are modelers, and people use them as their whole electric guitar rig, so you don't have to carry tube amps and pedals and
acoustic guitar rig.
and acoustic guitar.
And
Guilty
the big
as
thing
charged.
is it doesn't make any noise on stage, so no one's complaining. The bassist or the other guitar player, or the drummer, or the singer, no one's like, oh, the guitar's too loud. It's throwing me off. It's just literally a little toaster. I mean, it's big, but that's it.
Nobody ever said, turn your modeler down.
The new ones are so
just
good
doesn't-
too,
It doesn't happen.
Yeah.
and it's clean. You don't have some weird microphonic tube going crazy and an amp that got banged around on a bus.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I did one of the first pop tours I ever did. I used like a big fat Supro that weighed like 120 pounds on my whole pedal board, and like it sounded different every night, and it wasn't good. Because the artist was like, "Why did you have so much gain on the chorus last night? Like, what was that?" And I was like, "Nothing changed. My pedals were the same, the amp was the same, but I don't know if it was the room or the miking or the
Temperature, room,
humidity in the
mic,
air.
literally,
humidity,
and
air.
anything can change it." But with Kemper, it's like it's better for me, like as an argument. I'm like, literally, it is a computer that has done the same exact thing, so it is not my fault. Nothing changed. It's like,
Well, hey guys, I'm pretty proud of us. We talked about guitar stuff within the first minute of the show.
Right?
Yes.
All right, so let's continue the show now and not talk about guitar stuff for a little bit. Episode 103. Like I said, we've done 103 things. Welcome back, everybody. Mike, it's good to see you. Gabe, it's good to see you. Come on, Nicholas. You're my dude, man. I'm always very excited to hang out with you, even if it's this way. You guys know the deal. It's a Guitar Nerd podcast. It's a Guitar Nerd talk show. We talk a lot. Keep the feed clean so Gabe doesn't have to put you in timeout. Hug your haters. We are still waiting on some of the prizing from episode 100 because the baseball players are busy and the Ben Harper has been touring. So, guys, hang in there. We will get your prizes. We have not forgotten you. There's that. Let's play a quick round of what are you listening to? Nicholas, what is an album or a song or anything you've been listening to lately?
That's a great question. What have I been listening to? Started listening to Jimi Hendrix again. I'm trying to go back to my roots right now. So everything that made me happy when I first started learning guitar, I'm kind of just going back through. Specifically, there's a song that he did called Angel, but the demo version, which is in his room or something, it kind of sounds crappy, but it's incredible. That's pretty much all I've been listening to on repeat.
Yeah. Michael Venezia.
There's a story that goes along with what I'm listening to right now. So you have to bear with me. No.
Rush.
Roger, I've been listening to Roger complain the whole time. No.
1974.
Yes, that is correct. That's the right answer. You get a prize. And you are not Paul Tobias. You are allowed to answer. So, I was in Paso Robles this weekend. And, wine country, because why not? And our friends in Yachtly Crew were playing up there, too. So it was fun. So, as one does, you go around the downtown area of such a place, and there was a Goodwill. And a friend I was there with had never been to a Goodwill before. I'm like, no, you got to come in. Sometimes there's really cool things. Like, I went to go look for records, because sometimes you find some gems in Goodwill. Well, I head straight to the back, because every Goodwill, all the electronics and stuff are in the back. And
on
they
one shelf.
Yeah, on one shelf, and it's usually 3 records. And most of the time, it's Lawrence Welk, which isn't a bad thing necessarily, but... However, there were no records this time, but in the electronic section, I looked at it 3 times. I'm like, there's no way that this is here. And it was a Bose wave station. You remember those Bose wave stations?
The
right?
infomercial radio.
Yeah, and it was like the the triangle kind of looking thing with the two
Yeah.
speakers and the CD player and the whole thing.
My wife's
And they-
grandma has one.
And it was like, okay, why is this a Goodwill? Well, it probably doesn't work. So I plug it in and it turns on. Not only does it turn on, but a CD spits out of it. And it was Steely Dan, Gaucho. Now, I've been listening
go
to that
again.
because there was no remote that came with this. So I have to get a remote for it. I bought it for $17 and it works. And so I've been listening to Steely Dan Gaucho because I didn't have a remote for the Bose Wave Station that I bought for $17 at Goodwill. But
That's
the CD
wild.
was free.
My
Dan, man.
a company my stepdad used to work for made the case. He used to work for a injection molding company that did plastic
Oh, okay.
moldings. And they made the case for that thing, and they installed the speakers into the case before they shipped it away for electronics or whatever.
Nice.
Gabe, what have you been listening to?
I'm on a little throwback kick. I've been listening to
Dave
lots
Matthews?
of no.
Are you throwing back to the anniversary?
That's not a throwback.
Dave Matthews'
That's-
first
that's-
album. Throwing back to his first album.
No, but I've been listening to like a lot of like old Wallflowers and stuff like that.
Oh.
Going all the way
Okay.
back to the early 90s. So
Yeah,
throwback.
the early 90s.
The
Well,
olden
I mean,
days.
Yeah. A lot of that era of music has been on play lately.
Stop making the old guys feel old.
I mean, we're pretty much the same age.
I mean, he's like, I've been listening to oldies. And then he says the Wallflowers.
Yo, oldies.
Oh, okay. My daughter thinks I'm old. It's fine. I mean, Daria's right. I've been listening to one thing and one thing only for about 4 months. Now, 3 months now. 3 months. We work with the artist / producer / composer Zedd, Zedd, and his new album dropped last Friday. It's called Telos. It is arguably the most complete album I have heard in decades. From front to back, it is perfect. I'm not kidding. I've been living with it for, like I said, 3 months. I got an early copy. I got the masters, and his manager told me last week that I had listened to it 184 times before it dropped. That's how constant it's been in my life. I pretty much have listened to one thing for the last 3 months. It is not shocking. It's like, I've talked about it. As you can see, Daria feels the same way. She's been listening to it on repeat since it came out last week. It is phenomenal. If I were to give it a review, you would now understand. I would say Bach would be proud and Vivaldi would be in the crowd pumping his fists because he would be so stoked on it. There's one of the most beautiful things that he did was he got the original vocal stems from Jeff Buckley's song Dream Brother, and he did a new version of that song, and it's made me cry. I'm a huge Jeff Buckley fan. Rest in peace. Grace just turned 30 or 35 years old or something like that. So it's a song off of that album. It's perfect. It's unbelievable. And then it rolls right into a song with John Mayer. Oh my goodness gracious, John Mayer. It's like, could you not write a better hook together, these two guys? So anyway, it's beautiful. Give it a chance. It's not just an EDM record, if you will. It's my vote for album of the year. Done. I did it. That's how I feel. Nick, have you listened to it? I think you have.
I honestly haven't.
Dude, give it a spin.
I'm
It is so brilliant.
behind on listening to just anything.
Because you're on tour and you're working and you're riding your new motorcycle.
And then when I get home after playing music all day, I just don't want to listen to music. You know what I mean?
That's fair. It's your job. I totally
It's
get
like
it.
yeah.
I get it. I totally get it. So what a better opportunity than to talk about a couple of guitars and then have you teach us how to play guitar. That's great. I'm so excited. Mike, are you ready for this? I am so excited about this. Ladies and
We are
gentlemen,
ready for this. We are so ready.
This episode, hold on real quick. I got to find it. This episode is brought to you by 3 new Taylor guitars. You want to talk us through them? I'm going to throw a graphic on I almost said on stage, Mike. I'm going to throw a graphic on the screen, and will you introduce these instruments? And when we're done, I have a clip of one playing with another. Ooh, it's exciting. We'll talk about it. Ready, Mike? Here you go. The 3 new 50th anniversary models. Go for it.
Thank you, Jay. This episode is brought to you by the 50th Anniversary 312 CE Limited, the 50th Anniversary Builders Edition 812 CE Limited, and the 50th Anniversary 316 Baritone 6 Limited. Oh, wait. Why did the count come in there? Yeah, all these 3 are part of one of the last waves of 50th Anniversary guitars that we've been putting out here at Taylor Guitars through all of 2024 to celebrate our 50 years of making guitars, our golden anniversary. The 312 CE Limited is very much like the 314 CE Limited that we introduced with the first wave of guitars. The biggest difference being it is a grand concert shape as opposed to the grand auditorium shape. But it does come with the torrefied spruce top and Sapelli sides and back, fire stripe pickguard, and a shaded edge burst finish. Gorgeous guitar. And next up is the Builders Edition 812 CE Limited, again following along with the 50th Anniversary 814 CE Limited, the Builders Edition version, this is going to feature East Indian rosewood sides and back and a sinker redwood top. Also has Kona burst sides and back for a little extra flair. And then the 316 CE Baritone 6 Limited. We first introduced baritones into the line for our 35th anniversary for Taylor Guitars. And so why not have one for our 50th anniversary? And this is a 6-string baritone, so it's tuned B to B. Again, it's going to follow along very much like the 312 and 314 CE Limiteds, where it's shaded edge burst finish. It's going to have the a cool inlay that I can't remember the name of it, and fire stripe pickguard. Also, all 3 of these come with hard shell cases. And the one thing that ties all 50th anniversary guitars together, they all have gold tuners. They all have a gold badge on the inside, gold and black badge on the inside, commemorating the 50th anniversary. And all the bridge pins have gold dots. So it's pretty cool. They're all excellent and going to be collectible guitars because we only have one 50th anniversary. We're not going to make 51st anniversary guitars. So grab these while you can. These just hit the market about 10 days ago. So they are fresh smelling, ready to rock. And folk.
They are legit. We don't often talk about baritones on this show, so I wanted to lean into that a little bit. Gabe loves baritones.
So much.
Mike loves baritones. And I know Nick loves baritones. So I'm going to play this clip. It's pretty interesting. It's our boy Chris and Josh got together and they played a little so that you can hear. So Chris is playing the Builders Edition 812 CE, the 50th anniversary Builders Edition 812 CE, and Josh is playing the baritone so that you can hear these 2 textures together. We'll play a clip. It's about a minute, then we'll come back and chat about it and get into this lesson that we're going to get. Hopefully we're all better guitar players by the time this show ends. What do you think? Hold on, I got to find the clip.
50-50.
50, right. 70, 25, 75. Okay, here we go. Nice little clip put together. You could definitely hear it though.
I mixed it.
Yeah, you did mix that, didn't you?
I did. I hadn't seen the video.
Oh, really?
No.
That's part of it. We have a longer version that we put out in an article too. they talk about the instrument a little. But for this sake, I wanted to just play it. I wanted to play a minute of those two guitars. And Mike, what do you love about those two guitars playing together? Talk to me.
You know, you have the obviously the depth of the baritone is going to fill in a lot of empty space, right? So if you're, what I love about baritones is that when you have when you're playing in a duet situation, right? Sometimes, most of the time, you see two guitars, right? So you're getting all that mid range, but that low end is, you have somebody who might be playing like a little pedal tone on an open E or something like that. It's kind of the best you can do. But if it's a guitar and a baritone, well, now you have that extra width and depth of sound that really fills in the empty spaces there. And that's what I love about the baritones. In this particular case, the 316 CE also puts out a little extra mid-range because it's torrefied spruce and sapele. So you're going to get a rumble that's not so low that it's muddy. It's still playing within the sandbox that the Builder's Edition A12 CE is playing in as well, and not running it over. Does that make sense? Because if it was a rosewood one, it would probably overpower the 812. So I like the fact that you have sort of the mid-range being handled by the baritone. You have the low and high chimey stuff being handled by the 812, and those sharp corners on top get rolled off because it's a Sinker redwood top. So that pairing right there is kind of miraculous for that reason.
Gabe, he said miraculous.
I think miraculous is always appropriate when we're talking about baritone guitars.
How would you use that in the studio, Gabe? What would be I could see Gabe.
There's so many great uses for baritones.
Loving a baritone for like a secret weapon.
Wildly, I don't have one right now. I've long been an advocate of baritones, and there are a million great uses. Not the least of which is doubling other parts to thicken up guitar parts. You can make big, thick sounding guitars, and they're also great if you need to sing like in a lower range.
Oh, good point.
That's a super fun way to use them. I just kind of, it's just like, when you start messing around with capos for the first time, right? You put a capo on a guitar, you learn to sing a song in a different key. You pick up a baritone, play a song and go to sing it in a totally different key. You're going to find a whole other sound that you're not used to, and they're just highly enjoyable for that. I've just always loved them. But yeah, in the studio, a lot of times I'll double up parts. I've done like kind of like a Nashville tune guitar, like the opposite of a Nashville tune guitar thing, doubling up parts where it sounds like almost like a wide split apart 12 string, but not quite. I've done that with baritones before. There are a bunch of times when I've had acts come in the studio when they've wanted big, thick guitar parts, and then I've gone in and doubled the parts with a baritone without telling anybody, and they're like, "Oh, those big, thick guitars sound awesome." Yeah, they do.
Talking about Zed's record, Telos. I'm going to do that all night for you, Daria. Anyway, he does it's like a master class in panning, right? And I hear baritone all day long that way, right? Like different ways to do different chimey, kind of interesting, like low end panning. Like I love baritones. Nick, how would you use a baritone if you had one?
Yeah, I do have a baritone, and it's kind of like my studio like weapon. More than half of the studio sessions I do are more like for pop pop or like rap artists. So it's very simple stuff that I'm playing. It's usually like a couple chords, like an 4 to 8 bar loop or something. And anytime that if there's like someone struggling to come up with an idea in the room or something, as soon as I plug the baritone in, I can literally just play the most boring like and everyone's like, whoa, what was that? Like push record. And it's just because it's just low and sounds different. It just sounds different, So I always use it for that, and then also just for layering too. Like I might not necessarily play like full big chords on it. I might just play like tenths or something like on a baritone. Say the normal guitar is doing something like that. Like on the baritone, I might layer underneath it just. What would I do? Something very, very simple, but it just takes up so much more space, so you can delete a little bit of the amount of notes that you need. You know, it covers more ground.
Yeah, I think we should all have baritones.
They're really cool
should
too
be a law.
for yeah.
It should be a law.
They're really cool too for, you know, you think about baritone and the fact that it's producing low frequencies. And
Yeah.
one of the reasons you'll see them made of sapele and mahogany and stuff like that a lot is those things emphasize the mid-range, which the mid-range on a baritone is, or on a traditional guitar is kind of the high end of a baritone almost. And so that frequency range works really well with them. But like what Nick was talking about, kind of playing single note stuff, it's almost like enhancing those thicker low mids with, it doesn't mean you have to push a bunch of harmonic low end that's going to like suck up space in your mix. It's just thickening, you know, an area where maybe there isn't a lot else living in the, you know, in a mix.
What about a live setting? I mean, we've talked a lot about recorded. I mean, they're a secret weapon in the studio for sure, right? Or for writing parts. But what about a live setting? Like, would you use one live?
I think it's very situational. Like if it's just me and a vocalist, I think you could totally get away with it. But if it's like a full band with a bass player, a keys player, sometimes you just end up too muddy with them and like the magic of it gets lost. But if you arrange the song around the baritone, then you could totally use it live. But I mean, you could also just play higher up on the neck, you know, and make it work. But baritones have always felt like those pants that you can unzip the knee and then they become shorts. You know what I mean? Like everyone's like, oh, it's just a normal guitar, and then you're like, well, wait, I can unzip the knee and now I'm wearing shorts. And everyone's like, oh, you know what I mean?
Like one of those.
That's
That's
one
a
of those-
really good analogy.
Like one of those cars that looks like a Jeep, but you can drive it into the lake.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
I'm gonna
a
go buy
car,
those
it's a
short
boat.
pant short things right
You
now
need
on
them.
Amazon. I gotta look this up.
You can go
This
to a
is, like,
party and
they're
hike.
crazy.
Taylor artist Maggie Baugh uses a baritone for
regularly.
solo,
That's
very
her-
regular for solo
That's her
shows.
lead, her number
But
one
then
instrument.
you do see her in full band shows not using it as often. She'll use standard tune guitar. She's on tour with Keith Urban right now. She's like
Yep.
playing in Keith Urban's band.
Yep. Playing guitar, playing. That's right. She does not use it with a full band setting, but when it's just her,
She plays
She-
a baritone most of the time.
most of the time, yeah, that's good. We should get her on and talk about baritones.
We should. She's in Australia, I think, right now. I think I saw earlier.
Lost
It's a
Australia.
heck of a commute.
Australia.
Heck of a
Right?
commute.
Heck of a commute, yeah. It's what she's got to do to be a rock star. You
She's
know,
doing great things.
doing great things. All right,
Indeed.
it's time. It's time to talk to Nicholas Veinoglou, extraordinary guitar player, masterful teacher. We've had him on the show before. If you did not get a chance to see it, it was like 75 episodes ago or something like that.
Thanks, Tex.
What?
It's so good.
Costco sells those pants. Dude, I think we should all get those pants, actually.
Oh, we should have an episode where our baritone episode with Maggie Baugh.
And then
We
we'll
are
all
going
stand
to
up at some
we'll
point.
all
and
wear the
unzip.
pants, and we shall unzip our knees, and it shall be fun.
I love it. Well, back to the show. You know,
Please.
we've been trying to put a schedule of these shows together. We want these things to be very educational for you, or at least we want you to leave with a certain bit of value. We want you to learn something, or you know, maybe think about things a little bit differently. So some of these shows we're calling 101s, right? Meaning, in a collegiate sense, a 101 is a level 1 class, right? So we'll start level 1 with Nick, and maybe let's have you dive into improv. I see a lot of your lessons. You've done a lot of lessons for us where you teach us just little tiny things that can help improve our playing, or, you know, spit shine our playing, so to speak, right? To make us all just a little bit better. And I love these kind of classes where it's like maybe just certain ways to, you taught one a while ago. I think it was during the pandemic, and I got on, watched you do like a live thing, and I was like, and I've been using it. I want to say it's like a certain hammer-on part or something like that, and I'm like,
Right.
oh, that's awesome. I should do that, and I have, and it makes me better. So I'm thrilled to have you back on, Nick.
thanks for having me.
We're happy. Let's learn how to do some improv. How's that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess, when you think of improvising just from, zooming out and looking into like what it is, everyone automatically thinks, okay, cool. If I'm going to improvise something, I have to have only original ideas. Everything I do and play has to be completely from me and creative and this big artistic expression. And sure, a little bit of that is true, but I think most of improv comes from like recycled, regurgitated ideas that we've learned from songs we've played, from solos we've played, from licks we know, right? It's the same way, if I don't know any French. If I go to France and live there for 6 months, right, I'll inevitably start picking up some of the French language just by interacting at the coffee shop, at the store, right? And maybe I'll learn like a certain phrase here and there. I'll learn like, hi, my name is. I'll learn what time is it? Where is the bathroom? How much does this cost? Like, you know what I mean? You'll learn all these little phrases. And then there comes a point where you go, oh, okay, if I say, hi, my name is, and tag that onto, I'm having a good day. You know what I mean? Now I have a whole sentence and you can start kind of communicating ideas. So what I'm getting at here is, if you know only a couple of songs on the guitar, if you know only maybe one or two riffs or one or two solos, like that's enough to get started in improvising. You don't have to be this like masterful genius mind to start improvising. An example I always use, right, is everyone knows the minor pentatonic scale. That's like the guitar solo thing, right? It's like water or oxygen for a guitar player. So it's like, if I have A minor pentatonic and I don't know any licks, let's say I literally only know the scale. I don't know any licks. I don't know any songs or anything. I only know the scale, but I want to improvise with this, right? Well, think of it like this. You're on the freeway, you're driving, right? What do we want when we're driving? We want options, right? We never want to be like boxed in or cornered into a lane where if someone cuts us off, we're just going to get into an accident, right? And we want to feel comfortable exploring different options. If it starts raining, I have the option to turn on my windshield wipers, right? If someone cuts me off here, I can go to the right or I can go to the left, right? Like, you're not necessarily thinking in the moment. If someone cuts you off in front of you, you're not thinking, okay, let me use my right foot to let go of the gas pedal and hit the brake pedal and then steer this way, right? It's just a reaction. Like, you just react. And to me, that's kind of what improv is, right? Especially if you're playing with other musicians. Like if you're on stage playing with someone and they point to you to start soloing, you're really just reacting to that event, whatever song you're playing, whatever the chords are, right? But the reaction can happen on such a fundamental level that you don't need any like crazy theory knowledge or anything, right? Like if I have the minor pentatonic scale and I just take the upper octave of that scale, right? I could say, cool, instead of just going up and down the scale, maybe I'll skip every other note, or I will skip every other string, right? So maybe I play through the whole pentatonic scale, skipping every other string. So I'll start on the E string, and then I'll skip the B string, go right to the G string. Skip the D string, go to the A string, right? And now it already sounds a little bit different, right? So it's tiny little building blocks like that. Like that's kind of the essence of improv. Does that make sense, or does that make no sense to anyone?
No, it totally makes sense. Jay, you're muted.
Makes sense to me. Yeah, Jay, you're muted.
I was muted, but I
Jay, you're
didn't.
muted.
Nothing I said was important.
Nick, I wanna ask from the perspective of, so I spend a lot of time talking to tailor owners, and a lot of folks are real basic straight ahead strummers. Where would you start with somebody like that? Somebody who's just straight ahead strummer. They play chords at their, open mic or church or whatever, and they want to get into strumming or into improvising. Where's a good place for them to start, and where's a a good jumping off point?
Yeah, absolutely.
Great question.
I mean, yeah, going back to kind of what I was just saying last time, if you want to learn French and you move to France, you're going to start by learning these little phrases first, right? You're not just going to be able to speak French. So the number, in my opinion, right, some people don't believe me, but every student I've had thousands of students, all ended up being like, wow, this actually worked. If you want to learn to improvise, you have to start learning solos. One of my most influential professors in college, I was having a really hard time learning jazz, and I was like so discouraged. I'm like, I'm never going to be able to do this because, I know all the scales, but I can't play jazz. Like, what's going on? What's wrong with me? Maybe I'm just not musical. And he looked at me and he's like, you're thinking of it the wrong way. All you have to do is learn 100 jazz solos. He's like, if you learn 100 solos, you'll be the best jazz player ever, quote unquote, right? So if I'm just, more, if this is more my world and I want to start branching out into solo territory, first thing I'm going to do is just learn a couple of maybe my favorite songs. I'll pick an easier one to start and I'll just learn the solos, right? Note for note. And the nice thing about the internet, like YouTube, you can look up a tutorial for pretty much anything ever. So what I'll do is I'll start collecting little phrases, right? I'll learn one or two solos from songs that I'm familiar with. And then what you'll do is you'll go, okay, well, interesting. Over the G chord in this song, the solo went, and I go, okay, cool. So now I have this little idea, right? And then, okay, I say, in a totally different song I learned, over a C chord, the lick went, So now I go, okay, cool. Now I have a second idea. So I have, I think that's what I played first. And then the second idea from the other song I learned was, right? And now I have these two little ideas, right? Two completely different songs, two different ideas, but now I'm going back to my first song or something, right? And I say, what happens if I take a little fragment from that other song and mix it in here, right? So now I'm like, and I'm going to solo. Right? So it's just taking little fragments from different songs that you learn and then putting them together, right? And the same thing, people always associate improv with soloing single notes, but you can also improvise. For me, one of my favorite exercises on guitar, which you loosely call improvising, is I'll just kind of try experimenting with songwriting or something, right? And the process of songwriting, you're doing a lot of improvising. So even if I'm just strumming a couple different chords, maybe I say, what happens if I put, my F chord and my D chord together and try to make them sound good together and experiment with different chords in between, right? So much of improv and learning guitar in general is, I don't want to say fear-based, but
I think you're hitting right on it.
Yeah, we like to stick to the rules, right? It's like, well, okay, this song goes G, C, D, and F doesn't sound like it belongs there, so I can't use F. But then when you go, well, what if I did? It's funny. I was just home visiting my family, and I have a 3-year-old nephew, and I was just playing with him. I was like, okay, what do you want to draw? He had this big, huge piece of paper and all these colorful pencils and stuff. And I was like, what do you want to draw, Theo? Like, do you want to draw an airplane? Do you want to draw a train, a tractor? And he's like, I just want to draw. And he just started going crazy on this big piece of paper. Like, you know what I mean? And I was like, initially I was like, oh, well, you're doing it wrong. And I was like, what do I mean you're doing it wrong? I was like, he's doing it so right. He's literally just like experimenting. And then he like stepped back and looked at it and he's like, that looks like an alligator and this looks like a dinosaur. I was like, that is what I want to do with music. It's so hard to go to that state of mind, but that's like where you get the best ideas, the best songs, the best solos, like
that state of wonder, like when you started playing and you just put two things together and you went, oh, those work. You just knew it.
Yeah. You can't learn improv as like here's how you do it. This is it. It's a bunch of teeny tiny little light bulb moments. Like that's what learning guitar is. People always think of the arch of learning guitar as like, okay, beginner to intermediate, it's like this, and then you plateau, which is, semi-true, but there's not just like a day that you wake up and you're like, wow, I learned guitar, I'm good now. It's a bunch of tiny, teeny little bite-sized like mosquito bites that you don't even feel. It's like, oh, I can put this lick and that lick together. Cool. And then you do that 100 times. And now you've achieved like a paragraph or a novel of
I love that exact idea and what you said about teeny tiny light bulb moments, because for those who are earlier in the guitar journey and you're basically a strummer, maybe you've taken some lessons before, and I used to teach beginning guitar lessons when I worked in a guitar shop, and what most teachers will do when you're teaching beginners is you teach them songs. And the best way to teach them songs is to break them down into sections, a line at a time or a verse at a time in the chorus, and then you learn how to put the whole thing together. And that's exactly what Nick's talking about, is doing that with, you can take that same approach to solos, and then it seems not so scary. I think a lot of times people who are approaching improv or learning solos or anything like that, anything where it's single notes and it seems so fancy and so skilled, it gets scary fast. And I think people kind of, I'm just going to stay back here and do my strum thing because that's scary. And if you take the approach that Nick is talking about right now and you just break it down into a one line at a time, learn those notes, and then you'll put them together and then put some more together. And you're going to find things that go together, just like those first chords you learned, and go, oh, okay, that sounds good.
Yeah, I really think it's interesting. You touched on fear just a little bit. I mean, you said it too, Gabe. I think that people are stuck creatively in general. People are stuck in a box, right? We could have, Daria and I talk about it all the time. Songwriting, right? Songwriting. People think that it's prescriptive. Sometimes it is. Sometimes there's a thing that you are trying to accomplish with a song you write. You are following a template to make a song that works. There are so many people over hundreds of years, right, who have been saying this is how you write a song, until you choose not to write a song that way. And then, not to get very Rick Rubin on everybody here, but I agree, right? Sometimes you just make something for yourself and it's like, whoa, that turned into a hit. That was magical. Those moments where you write something that's so simple that everybody else goes, why didn't I write that? So it's really interesting that you touch on fear, and that you said, Nick, I've never looked at that. You broke it down so simple right there, where you're like, you got two chords and here's a little lead, and learn the lead and maybe take that lead and blend it with that lead. It might make something kind of cool. I mean, there's a couple of questions here. I want to kind of scroll back up, but there's a good one. You said, okay, is learning scales required for improv?
Yeah. I mean, yes and no. It's like, not, if you don't know your scales, it's not like you're not going to be able to improvise, right? But it's kind of like, if you have to, to drive from Massachusetts to Florida, would you rather do it in a car, or would you rather do it with like bare feet? You know what I mean? It's like, it's going to be a lot easier in the car. So the car being knowing some scales. But the great thing is you don't need to know a lot of scales. And what I teach most of my students is actually the opposite of that. I usually say, like, let's look at what the chords are telling us. And most of my improv is always based off of chord tones and arpeggios. So basically whatever's happening in each chord of the moment, right? If I say I'm playing over a G chord and I just play the notes from G, there's my arpeggio of G, right? You could also play a full scale over that. My only aversion to scales is that, like the pentatonic scale, for anyone who plays the pentatonic scale, they call it the pentatonic box because you get boxed into it, and then we go, cool, this is safe and familiar and fun. And then we go, how do I get out of the box, right? If you go to any guitar lesson website anywhere, you always see break out of the box. What do we mean break out of the box? We mean, where else can I play aside from this one shape, right? And scales, all scales, the major scale, minor scales, the modes, they all have this sort of boxiness to them on the guitar just by the way it's laid out, right? But yes, that's the long-winded answer. I think it's important to know your scales for improvising.
We got another question by producer Jordan. Jordan produces this show, and he's in the feed, and he's asking questions. Sometimes he's on the show. But it's a good question here. Nicholas, can you please walk me, because he doesn't care about anybody else in the feed. I'm just kidding, Jordan. Love you. Can you walk, how about we're going to make this inclusive. Can you walk us through practicing how to go about learning how to play a single note runs when other guitars are playing chords? Oh, that's an interesting little ask.
Yeah. Yeah, it's actually a really good question, because what happens a lot of times, especially if we're just used to playing by ourselves in our bedroom or, you know, wherever it is, it becomes really challenging. You know, we sound really good in our bedroom, and then we go to jam with one of our friends and it all goes out the window and we're like, oh my God, I'm the worst guitar player in the world, right? And I think all that is when we're in our room practicing, right? If I was practicing those 2 licks, whatever it was, right? I kind of can just sit there and fuddle around and get it comfortable under my fingers, but I'm not having to react to a moment, right? Being if I'm playing with a band or I'm jamming with a friend or something, if I'm not used to reacting to a tempo, to a key, right? These are all very, very big ideas, or not big ideas, but very essential ideas. So the biggest thing I see guitarists struggling with when it comes to single note soloing is like staying or finding a groove or staying in time. So the best thing you can do, what I do for the most part, is I either just record myself playing, like a video of myself playing, you know, or I'll just loop a chord progression like that, and then I'll try to jam along with my actual self playing in time, or even better, play along with a record, right? If I play along with whatever, a James Taylor song, and it's full band, you know, there's a drummer, a bass player, a rhythm guitar player, and there's a little guitar solo I learned in it. I want to play along with that solo and pretend that I'm the only one soloing and that the whole band is behind me, supporting me, right? Put yourself in the environment of a live performance where you are reacting in real time. Does that make sense?
You know, we can,
Yes.
you know, with the advent of technology, a lot of what you're saying was not possible to us that started decades ago. And, you know, we used to, like, you know, something I was taught was literally like my teacher would play a 3-chord progression on a cassette tape. He would just record that. And then he would say, solo over this repeatedly, and then come back next week and we'll analyze how your improv skills have improved or what you're doing there or whatever. What you're suggesting with playing the whole band there, yeah, you could do like the whole music -1 thing, right? You know, and just have those backing tracks and just solo over the whole darn thing with everybody playing with you, you know? And it's sort of like, for those of you that play, you know, like sports like tennis or, you know, I guess pickleball is really good. You know, you raise yourself up to the level of your competition, in the sense that, like, if you're playing somebody better, you're going to play better. So if you play with this whole backing band behind you that's better than you, quote unquote, your soloing skills, you're going to force yourself to be a little bit better and really just kind of, you know, bear down and start really getting into it and playing to the level of the people that you're playing with. Because of, 100%. Use that word, fear again, right? We don't want to look bad. We're afraid to look bad on stage or even in our own bedrooms if we're playing along with it. We want to hit all the right notes. And then after a while, that fear starts to go away. You become comfortable with being uncomfortable. Next thing you know, you kind of don't care. You just want to play. But that is something that technology gives us, is the ability to do exactly what Nick just said while removing the guitar or whatever and playing with all those other musicians in your bedroom or anywhere else you feel like it. So
plus we're in such a fortunate era now where we have things like loopers.
I was just going to say.
Loopers are, or if you don't want to go buy a looper, you can record it on your phone. Those are my kids. Hi kids. You can record, you know, you can record a 3-chord or 4-chord song on your phone and play over it.
I'm you know, I write music a lot and I'll write parts, and I, just like you said, Gabe, I mean, the voice memo, we know that we've talked about this in the past. I think Daria was on once. We were talking about songwriting. We talked about, I mean, I might be walking into the grocery store and something might I might just hear a melody in my head, and I pull out my voice memo app and I just hum it into there, and then I try and recreate those notes later on a guitar or a synth or something like that. Like it's real. Gabe, I'm so glad that you said looper, because without a looper, I would be I would say when I invested in a looper, I finally started learning how to play guitar better. And I think that, Nick, not to bring us back to a very dark time, but during the pandemic, when you were doing lessons online, I watched once, and you said something. You might have done a live lesson on Instagram for us, for Taylor. And you said something about the word theory is scary for people, right? And you're like, why? It's just, I think you said something like, why? It's just a word, right? We all know theory. We just don't believe that we know it. So you get a lot of people asking questions about, is learning scales required? Well, nothing's required, really. You can kind of make this up on your own. But it is easier to drive on a road in a car, unlike
it's
being barefoot and running
not
like the
gonna hurt
Flintstones.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's helpful, right? It's like if you're, a teacher and you have 150 kids in your class, and you like who gets along with who, and which kid is allergic to peanuts and what, I mean? You kind of know everyone, but you don't know anyone's name. So when it's time to call someone out, you have to be like, you over there behind that one, come over here, as opposed to being like, oh, that's John, Sam, and Abby. Like the names to me is like what music theory is. It's like you kind of are already teaching the class, but it's like you just are now putting a name to each face.
I'm terrible. I'm that guy who's like, someone will be like, hey, play E minor, whatever. They'll say a chord, and I'll go, show it to me. Oh, that's it. Oh, okay. Yeah, I got that. Right? Like I'm terrible at that. Hey, Gabe, real quick. I get a text from my daughter, and she says, I'm watching you right now, and she took this picture. Oh, you can't see it? Oh, I'm going to send it to you. It's the most oblong like snap of just your face. It's hilarious. So good right now. I'm like real proud of this photography work.
Lola or
Oblong
Moni?
Gabe.
Lola,
Oblong
man.
Gabe.
She's it's like long face.
High five,
Gabe.
Lola. We love Lola. She's great.
We love Lola. Lola, I love you,
She's
kiddo.
she's
Thanks
so
for
rad.
watching. Anyway, yeah, it's great. I'll share it to you guys. But anyway, there's another question here. Where did it go? Rob. Here's a good one. Rob Seymour. I am a singing guitarist. I have trouble learning to play lead. I barely know my fingerboard as far as notes, but I can do some chords up and down the neck. Any other suggestions to help me? I mean, that's where a lot of us live. I would love to hear, Nick.
It feels like this is a little bit like coming on the tail end of what you were just talking about the idea of maybe not knowing the names of things. And I think, for those of us who are a little, I mean, I'm in my 40s, and so I think right. I think for some people that have been maybe playing a little while or started learning a bit later, the idea of having to learn theory sounds like you have to take a college class in order to enjoy the guitar. And I think that's maybe where people get off track, or maybe just don't find it approachable. And maybe that's kind of what Rob's asking about, is how can it be more approachable for him?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, with anything, anytime I have to learn a new skill, even if it's not on guitar, I want to kind of build off of something that I'm already comfortable with, right? So for example, like if I am very comfortable, maybe the song you're playing is all bar chords and you're going from, G to A minor, right? Let's just say that's the song, right? And I go, okay, now I'm going to learn my first scale so I can start improvising with it, right? And maybe I say I'm going to learn my major scale. So I go, okay, I'm going to learn my G major scale, just take the tab off the internet, and here's my scale. What I don't want you to do is go, okay, well, this is just an isolated event. Like the G major scale just only starts here, and it just exists in this weird single note pattern, and it doesn't have anything to do with anything, right? what I want you to do is I want you to go, okay, how can I anchor this new item to something that I'm already confident and familiar with, right? So when I go, well, here's my G bar chord, right? I go, well, look at this. The G bar chord starts on the first note of that G major scale. So now I go, oh, amazing. Anytime I need to access this new thing, this major scale, as long as I can visualize what I already know, right? I could be all the way up here on A minor, up here on C, and I want to play my G major scale. All I have to do is visualize in my head my G chord. I go, okay, well, that's where the G chord is, and I know my major scale starts on the same fret that the bar chord starts on, you know? So anytime you're learning something new like that, just attach it, anchor it down to something that you're already familiar with, and it's going to save you just like a ton of thorns in your side.
Damn it.
That's a really good tip. I like that.
That's a really good tip.
That little bit of song you're playing sounded like Lost Lonely Boys, and I was like, that would be a really good song to learn licks from, because they do that like strummy pattern with those licks between it. I was like, I might need to learn that tomorrow. Like,
I played that song at my high school talent show because the girl I had a crush on, Carmen, liked that song.
It's a good song, man.
It's a great song. And I messed it up.
It's funny
too.
you mentioned Carmen, because here she is.
Oh, man, that would be awesome, Mike, if you could pull that off. Sambo has a question here for Nick. Nick, I'm pretty comfortable moving up and down on the same string, but less confident moving across the fretboard from string to string quickly. Any tips to get more fluid at finding notes all over? I love that question.
Great question. How do I want to answer this? Because I mean, the easiest answer is to just go, oh, well, just find the same note on every string, right? It's like find E here, E here, E here, E here, E here, right? Like just be able to find all of your octaves of something, right? That helps, using the octave trick. Like, okay, there's this, right? And that's kind of how I learned the fretboard. If someone was like, oh, play me a G, the note G on the B string, right? I have no idea where it is, but I go, okay, well, I know G here, I know that octave, and I know this octave, so there's my note G on the B string, right? The way that I kind of glue together the whole fretboard like that is a mixture of that idea, just finding your octaves. But what I want you to do, right, almost every guitar player that I encounter is pretty familiar with the names of the notes on the low E string, right? Because when we play our chords, I play a G chord, I find a G. When I play an A bar chord, I play an A. When I play an F, right? We know the root notes on the low E string. So what I do is I say, okay, learn obviously all the ones on the low E string. And then once you know the low E string, move on, right? Go to the A string, right? And most guitarists are more familiar with the A string too, because we have our A chord, our C chord, right? All of our other power chords, bar chords on the A string. The last one, which is like the stranger, no one really wants to bother to learn it, is the D string, is the notes on the D string. But you already know all the notes on the D string if you know the notes on the low E string, if you know your octaves, right? So it's really just about like hammering in and drilling, finding each note. And what I do a lot is I'll go through and I'll just say the name of one note. And what I'll do is instead of going and looking for it like this and trying to find it, I'll try to do like mental math, right? So that first thing I said, where I said, play the note G on the B string. Instead of me physically going, okay, well, here's my octave, here's my next octave, and there's my G on the B string, I want to do that all in my head. Like visualizing it is so powerful for your brain to move to the guitar. So I'll look at the fretboard and I'll imagine my hand like doing this, and then I'll say, okay, well, I know that's where that G is, so one more octave up from there. And then I'll go back and I'll kind of check my work. But visualizing stuff, huge. Yeah, that's it. I hope that helps.
I love that, actually. I love that whole piece about understanding, like, we all know where the root note is of the chord we're playing. Like, that's such a good place to start.
Going back, sorry, Mike, real quick, and me going back to that lesson in 2020, it is true. We do all know the root note, but you don't give yourself credit, right? Gabe, I connected with that real well. Wow. I'm learning how to play guitar finally. Crap. Mike,
You know,
what were you saying? Sorry, I rudely cut you off.
Really, like two really quick things to that. You know, one thing going back to what Nick was saying earlier, like learn all the solos, right? You know, back as a kid, you know, I couldn't read music, right? But I always had Guitar for the Practicing Musician. That magazine I got every month, right? And it had tabs in it. And Steve Vai was one of my guitar heroes. And one month they tabbed out the Attitude song by Steve Vai. If you haven't heard it, you should listen to it. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
There's a portion in the song in the tablature, and this will go to what Nick was saying, where it says, play all the E's available on the fingerboard in a chaotic frenzy. So guess what I wound up doing? Learning where E is everywhere on the fingerboard so I could play that one part. But that also blended into other things down the road. And I take that with me to this day. So doing the octave tricks, finding out where those E roots are, where the root E is, where the octave E is, things like that. And once you get one note down or one string down, move on to the next. But also to what Nick said earlier, you're not going to wake up tomorrow and know all this.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
It's like little wins along the way, and that's why it's called practice. Repetitive motion builds habits. So you do this repeatedly and do it a little bit every day, a little bit every day, a little bit every day. Next thing you know, your recall is crazy good, and you're not even thinking about it, and it's happening because it's become muscle memory. So, you know, those are the things that I take away from things like this. Like, I got to remind myself, I'm not going to know this tomorrow. Like, this is great. Yeah, I'll just do it and I'll have it. No, you need to keep practicing. It's very important to do that too. So.
Tex mentioned Tony Policastro. Tony Policastro is actually going to join us soon on the show, so stick around for that schedule. And it's always great to have guitar educators on because, I mean, it's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get better. But I have a quick, I'm going to insert a quick segment of 2 minutes of sports. So you just said practice, right? And then I start thinking, every time I think Steph Curry, I think Kobe Bryant, rest in peace. I think Messi, right? Enter another, incredible sports ball player or something like that, right? Like the idea, race car drivers.
One of
right?
the Guardians, perhaps.
On the Guardians, yeah. On the
Maybe
Guardians.
not.
So a Guardians
Maybe not though.
player.
Best closer
Anyway.
in MLB.
But you hear that all the time, right? You hear it's putting in the extra time, putting in the extra effort, putting in the extra, if you've got 5 minutes, pick up your instrument and learn and take some of these little tidbits of information and use them, and you're going to become a better guitar player for sure.
You've heard me talk about that before. I take guitar breaks. I mean, I'm lucky. I work for myself. I work from home, but every day before I set about if I'm here at the desk and I'm editing, I have a guitar stand back here and I pull out one of my guitars and it lives here for the day, and I take guitar breaks. When you get to that point where you start feeling like antsy or like you're sick of being at your desk, you're done for a little bit, I pick up a guitar and I can just go walk around. Just take a little walk around the house, play guitar. Just the little guitar breaks are so good. I love what Mike was saying too a minute ago about, and what Jay was saying about practice. If I think we're talking a lot about people who are getting into, because of our audience and some of the folks we've gotten to know over the years of doing this show, the idea of getting into improvising and getting into learning solos, and the fact that can be daunting. But so was picking up a guitar to begin with, and you did that. You're already that far. So just like learning to pick up your hand and switch, pick up your left hand and switch from one, unless you play guitar upside down like Rob McGargle, switch chords, pick your hand up from your D chord and go to your G chord. That was daunting once too, but it's not anymore because of the muscle memory you've built up from just doing it a bunch. Just like anything else, you didn't get in a car and you could just drive. You were probably terrible at it, the first time you did it. Everything we do in life, we're always learning. The older we get, the less things we're learning often. And so our brains, we're just used to being able to walk into the kitchen and make dinner, or get in the car and drive somewhere. We're hardwired to know how to do everything already. And so the idea of learning anything is just daunting because it's like, I don't want to deal with this. But the reality is you can learn things pretty quickly.
We have
just
to
muscle
remind
memory.
ourselves, we have to remind ourselves that 10,000 hours rule, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that's when you're an expert at it, 10,000 hours. So as long as we keep reminding ourselves that we're not going to know this tomorrow, but if we do, good on us.
And what does Bob Taylor say? Anything worth
words.
doing,
It's
It's
worth
worth-
doing poorly.
give yourself the grace to do it poorly. You'll get better.
He also
And I-
says
I-
there's
too
no
on
such.
that, as I used to obsess over practicing, I used to think like if I'm not practicing 4 hours a day, like I'm not gonna be the best. And I had a teacher who pretty early on in my like guitar playing and whatever career was like, you're thinking about practicing wrong. He's like, you're really fixated on the hour or the 2 hours or 3 hours a day. And it's nothing to do with the amount of time. It has to do with the quality of focus in that time. And he's like, your brain really only wants to focus and absorb for like 15 to 20 minutes at a time, right? So, I was sitting down for 2.5 hours practicing, and I would leave the practice session and I was like, I couldn't even tell you what I practiced because my brain was just like mush, complete mush, And what he recommended I do, he was like, practice for 15, 20 minutes in the morning, another 15 minutes at lunch, another 15 minutes at night, and then another 15 minutes before bed. There's a whole hour of practice, and you're going to remember everything, as opposed to just sitting down for an hour or two straight and like really, just getting through it. And not only did that help me progress way faster, it also just makes sense for it's a lot more realistic for people's lives. You know what I mean? Like, you have kids, you have a job, you have to do all these things around the house. It's like most people don't have 2 hours free every day that they can just sit down unbothered and focus, right? So it's a lot easier to go, let me get 15 minutes in the morning and 15 minutes before bed. That's truly focused, right? I mean, the TV isn't on, my phone is, I'm not scrolling on my phone, I'm not reading a news article, listening to a podcast. Like, I'm just doing one thing on the guitar for 15 minutes. And if you do that, even if you just do one little 15-minute snippet a day, like, you'll see major improvement in 2-3 weeks,
Because improvement's cumulative.
And it's small wins. That's a very Tony Policastro thing too,
Yeah.
right? It's small wins. Like you work on something until you win, and then then just put it down.
It's like, well, it's like
Sometimes-
Mike said about 10,000 hours. Like, it's cumulative.
Yeah.
It's not,
It's not 10,000 in a row.
Yeah, well, exactly.
That's a lot
what
of
Nick's-
practice.
That's
And
what
sometimes those 10,000 hours are really like 15,000 hours if you're just logging the hours and not really getting anything out of it.
Truth.
And well,
100%.
and what you were saying a second ago, Nick, hit so home with me because you can, at anything you pursue, you can sit down and dig in and chop away at it and be frustrated or just do it because you're determined. You have to be able to conquer it in one sitting or whatever, and it's probably not going to go well. There's so many things, like if you just step away, it's going to be better when you pick it up. I feel like everything I've ever learned how to do in life is very much like that. You got to do it in snippets, because if you try to swallow the whole thing at once, it's way too much.
Yeah, it's overwhelming for sure. I got another question here from TX Archer. Nick, do you use fret position numbers to determine where best to play a particular key? That's a good question.
That is.
Yeah. Yes, I do. Right? I mean, I think so. I mean, the fret markers are super handy. If you're like, hey, let's play a song in the key of C, right? I use the fret markers. Like, okay, here's one C here, and then I know in between these two is my other C. So like, it's a really good immediate visual reference point for whatever's going on. And then if I'm picking like which area to play the song in, I kind of want to consider like where the song is going. Like, do I have to play an F chord? And if I do I want to play it all the way up here, or will it sound better down here for this song, right? So it's, the fret markers are like great reference points for kind of mapping out a song, right? Not to say that you can never switch between them in the middle of a song, but yeah, good. It's a
Yeah,
good.
I got a question along those lines, sort of related. What about practicing improv or soloing with a capo? Kind of
Great
the same
question.
thing, in a way.
Yeah, yeah. So there's always two ways that people think about the capo, right? If I put a capo on, do I have a capo here? I don't. I don't know where it went. But for example, if I say, okay, this song is G, C to D. Those are my three chords, right? A lot of people will go, okay, well, capo the fourth fret, and then play G, C, D. So I'm basically going, this was the capo, G, C, D, right? But in reality, I'm actually here. I'm playing F sharp. Here I'm playing B, and here I'm playing E. So the new chord progression, if I'm communicating with a whole band, I'm going to say play, B to E to F sharp, right? But since I have the capo on, I'm as a guitar player just thinking, G, C to D. Does that make sense? I totally forgot what the question was now.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're talking a bit about. I think a bit of what you're talking about is that when you're thinking about learning to improvise, if you've ever used a capo, you've already transposed to an extent, right? And so you already have to be able to talk about things. You're mentally already doing it. You just don't know you are, because you're moving that chord shape, and you can't tell somebody it's a G. It's not. So if you have somebody who doesn't have a capo, you have to tell them what it is. You're already doing that work, which means you can do more.
Right. And I guess the other thing too is, like, with a capo, a lot of the times if it's just you playing and you want to use some new lick or some song and just play it higher up, I just imagine like this whole part, the headstock of the guitar, just moving to where the capo is.
100%.
Right.
If you're not playing with anyone else, like, to me, when I capo on the fifth fret, my tuning pegs are right here. You know what I mean? Like, this is where the guitar starts now. So all the spaces between what I normally would play have just shifted to here, to this area, right?
I know this might sound crazy, but I would say I started playing with a capo for the first time during the pandemic. Like, for some reason, the capos just scared me. I don't know why.
I'm bad with capos.
Yeah, I was really bad with capos. I couldn't figure out how to transpose where I was on the fingerboard, really, and like what notes turned into and I was confused and whatever. But I think there's like it's really interesting. There's like a new generation of artists who are capoing electric guitars more and more. And I started just going, why? Okay, interesting. Back to a baritone. Oh, it's a texture. It's a layer. It's a tonality that I didn't have before. So I bought a capo, and then I bought a bad capo, and I didn't like that capo, and I couldn't figure out that capo. So I ran the gamut of capos during, that kind of period of. Then I borrowed a capo from Tim Godwin. I figured Tim was in Air Supply, so he knows everything about capos. And it did. I think it was a G7, and he got me that capo, and I was like, okay. He let me borrow it. I think I kidnapped it for quite a while and returned it, 2 years later. Like when you borrow someone's pen. Yeah.
Or microphone.
Anyway. Or microphone, right? Yeah. I did that with you, didn't I? You lent me a camera mic.
You still have it? It's been like 4 years.
Do I really?
Yeah.
Oh, well.
There's
fine. That.
It's fine. We share stuff. It's fine.
I have Gabe's
Obviously,
mic.
you've needed it really badly, Gabe.
I know. I was using it a lot. But what you're talking about, I love Nick's explanation of thinking about capos is just moving the nut of the guitar. If you think about a baritone, it's moving the nut of the guitar the other way. You're just adding more frets.
I see what you just did there.
Brought
Yeah,
it around to
frets.
baritones again, because I always do, yeah.
Well, that's that. Fellas, do you have any more questions for Nick? I think this has been brilliant. I think we should take away some tidbits from this one. Practice, or don't call it practice. Just call it
Nick, do you have any homework for the
Playing.
listeners?
Ooh, homework.
Something everyone should go try tomorrow.
Yeah. Try actually practicing for 15 minutes. Because I mean,
when you say
look, when I say actually try practicing for 15 minutes, like it's so easy to make excuses, and like anyone can get an extra 15 minutes out of their day. Anyone. If you got to stay up 15 minutes later or wake up 15 minutes earlier, like you can do it. You know what I mean? 15 minutes is like you wake up, you brush your teeth, go to the bathroom, you make her coffee. It's been 15 minutes. It's like it's no time at all, you know? So, you know, tomorrow for the next week, for the next 25, 50 years, just try doing 15 minutes right when you wake up and pick something. Start with something that you're comfortable with, but you're not 100% on. Pick whether it's a song you're learning that you go, you know what? I 65% of the time can nail this one chord, you know, G to D. I mess up a little bit. So let me just loop that G to D very slowly. Start slow enough so that it seems silly and you're like, okay, this is too slow. This is a joke. And then bump it up, you know, a little bit until you mess up. And then if you mess up, go back a little slower and then just keep speeding up, slowing down. And then a week later, you're going to be able to play G to D like easy.
I love your note about slowing it down.
Yeah.
I
slow it
love
down.
that.
That is.
I love that. When you're like, same thing when you're learning a solo, right? You can slow it down. Slow it down to where you can do it. I like to use a metronome for these things. Slow it down to where you can do it in time.
Yeah.
You will, everything
Otherwise,
you've ever done, you'll get faster at naturally. When you can do something well, you'll get faster. But if you can do it slowly and do it correctly and comfortably,
and
you'll get
that's where
faster
a lot of
over time.
frustration comes from, you know, like if I try to learn something that I know is a little too fast for me,
Yeah.
and I'm sitting there like, and I
Right.
can't do it, I'm like, wow, you suck, you're bad at guitar, you should quit, you shouldn't be doing it.
You go in and
It's
try to
like,
learn
okay, I gotta
Zakk
work up to
Wylde.
that.
Yeah, you try to
Yeah.
learn a Zakk Wylde solo at Zakk Wylde speed. It's not going to go well.
Exactly. 100%.
You know what? The From the Factory podcast, remember, Gabe, we had Marty Schwartz on once, and I think what he uses to learn all the songs that he then will turn around and teach is, I think it's called like the Amazing Slowdowner or something like that, where you can take a song from, you know, Apple Music, Spotify, Tidal, whatever, YouTube, and you can put the link in this app, and the app will actually slow it down so that you can start to form your dexterity and your learning around how this actual thing, you can kind of figure out what notes they're playing. It's pretty impressive, but slowing it down is also something I learned from you, Nick.
I still use that program to this day.
That's what it's called, right? The Amazing Slowdowner
there's
or something like that?
Slower Downer, and then there's also one called Transcribe with an exclamation mark.
Yeah.
They both do the same thing. You can slow anything down. It won't mess with the pitch. You can also change the key. You can loop sections. So, you know, if there's a fast thing, I just put it down until I'm like, this is laughably slow, and then nail it, and then bump it up 3 or 4 BPM. Nail it, bump it up 3 or 4 BPM, you know. And then sometimes, too, it's like a little psychological trick. Once you're up to about 98% speed, you're like pretty much there. I'll put it over the actual speed. I'll put it faster. I'll put it at 106% speed. Play it really fast, and then you go back down to the original tempo of the record, and you're like, why does this feel easy now? You know? So sometimes you can try that. Unless it's literally too fast already to be, you know, Flight of the Bumblebee, you're not going to get 106 over it. But
Excuse
awesome.
me.
That's such a great tip. I love that.
That is a great tip. That is a fantastic tip. This has been a super fun episode. Learning a lot. I hope everybody in the feed has learned a lot and stayed engaged with this. It looks like, just remember, we all learn at different speeds. Hey, that is the quote of the day. That's true, right? Hey, Gabe, when we're editing stuff and we put supers on videos, what do I always say? Hey, you have to edit this for the slower readers, right? Because we may read pretty quickly, but somebody else might read slower.
And
so that is a really good
you've
point.
already watched it 100 times. You know what's coming, and other people don't.
There's that. So Nick is playing an 811, a GT 811. So that guitar is a little bit smaller than a full scale instrument. So I want to go to size of guitar real quick because last 2 weeks ago, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a couple weeks ago when we had episode 102, it was called, what would we call it? GS Mini Mania. And we talked about our new GS Mini MLB collaboration, our collaboration with Stio, just the GS Mini in general. Do you have any feeling as an educator, excuse me, about size of instrument? Because you're playing one as a super pro. You've been doing this for a long time. You went to school to learn how to, you know what I'm saying? Where some people are just picking up instruments for the first time. So learning on a GS Mini, learning on a GT size guitar, or do you have any thoughts around that?
Yeah, I mean, to me, like, that question has always kind of haunted me because I'm like, it's gonna feel easier on, a GS Mini to be playing these chords, but maybe you have really monstrously large hands. Like, if you're just like a big person, you're really tall, have huge hands, like, it might feel harder on a GS Mini. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
like, I always say, like, go to a guitar store and just play a bunch of guitars. Even if you're just starting and you only know like how to play a G chord barely, like, just pick up a couple guitars and see which one feels most comfortable for you, right? It's like guitars are like mattresses. Like, I like a really firm, I would like to sleep on a rock if I could, you know what I mean? And some people like to sleep on like you sag into it by like a foot, it's the same thing. It's like whatever feels more comfortable for you individually.
I know what you should do. This is what you should do. Is you should pick yourself up one of these. Again, this episode was brought to you by the 3 new 50th anniversary guitars. 50th anniversary 312 CE Limited, Builder's Edition 812 CE Limited, and a 316 CE Baritone 6 Limited. Did you like that little plug?
And the letter Q.
And the letter Q. All right, Mike, it's about that time. It's a time for Mike's question. But can I ask a question? Can I ask Jay's question before we ask Mike's question?
Sure. It's your
Okay.
show.
I don't know if I ever asked you this, Nicholas, but why the Donut Doctor?
I just like donuts. There's no like big meaning behind it. I like kind of finessed my way through high school by using donuts to get extra credit because I failed math so many times.
And you're a guitar player, which is fantastic.
Yeah. I just like donuts, I don't know.
I love it.
Kind of just happened.
Where can people find you? DonutDoctor.com?
Yeah, I mean, it's the Donut Doctor Music. Am I unmuted? Oh, it's the DonutDoctorMusic.com.
Okay.
Or you can just Google the Donut Doctor because I'm the only one. So
And you will find a billion videos of Nick
yeah.
on camera playing guitar because that is what he does. We are gracious to have you here, man. You're fantastic.
Thanks for
I think
having
it's
me,
time
as
for
always.
Mike's question, and then we will wrap up this episode. We already did 2 minutes of sports. See?
Yes, we incorporated.
Roger's talkative tonight. Yeah.
2 minutes of
He's
Roger.
been 2 minutes. He's been because I was away for the whole weekend, so I got back late yesterday, and he just really wants me to hang out with him, and he gets really annoyed when I talk to other people. So, and he's really would you stop it? Anyway, it's time for my question for Nick, and so let's throw this one out there. You are a performing musician. You are a touring guitarist. For you, what would be the ultimate venue to play? Whether you played it already or not, what would be the ultimate venue that you would love to play? That you could just be like, yeah, I made it.
I would love. It's still like on the list. I haven't played it. Red Rocks in Colorado, I think, is just the coolest freaking place ever. And like, there's so many live videos of like Derek Trucks playing there that I've just have like been drooling over since I was a kid. Easily Red Rocks. I think it's so sick. I've never even been there. I've only seen videos of it. So
Such a good answer.
Same. Yeah.
Who
Yeah.
do you have an artist that you have not played with that you would love to play with? Like a bucket list artist?
I think it would be sick to play for Justin Timberlake because there's an artist I was playing with 2018, we were on tour with him in Europe opening for him, and I'd never seen the show, and he has like, full horn section, BGVs, like full band, and there's so much guitar. It's like completely guitar driven. It's not just like, sitting back, strumming some chords, there's leads, there's solos, there's like a bunch of crazy lines. It's like all over the place and absolutely insane. I think it would be so fun.
That's awesome.
Red Rocks is awesome. We lived in Colorado, and I got to see a show or two at Red Rocks. There's also another amphitheater there. I don't know if it's still called Fiddler's Green, but I remember when I went from
Fiddler's
watching shows at...
Glen?
Huh?
Is it Fiddler's Glen? Or is it
No,
Green?
there's one called Fiddler's Green.
Maybe I'm thinking of something else.
I went with my parents to see the Beach Boys and Kenny G there, and that show was fire. Anyway, I also saw The Cure and Love and Rockets with my brothers. That was awesome. Wow. I mean, anyway, but then years later, I came back to when I was touring, and I remember standing on the stage, and I was like, the stage is tiny. Like, and that's another thing at Red Rocks. I've seen shows at Red Rocks, and I've played shows at Red Rocks. Red Rocks is the perfect venue. It's
Fiddler's Green
got
is still
so
there?
much room. It's everything. I hope, Nick, that you get to play Rogers.
Roger is so cute tonight.
Come on.
He's
up.
making the cutest sounds. It's so good. He sounds like
I warned you before the show started. I warned you this was going to happen.
one of the things before they turn into gremlins. That's what he sounds like. The Mogwais. That's what he sounds like. It's so good. I love it. Oh. He's so cute tonight.
Are you
He's
done?
amazing. He's cute
We got to
every
finish
night.
the show. We have to
All
finish
right.
the show.
All right.
Nick, you rule.
Nick, you rule. You're
Thanks.
I feel so
Oh my
inspired to
God.
play right now.
I know. I think everybody should have some homework. If it's not too late where you are, appreciate you guys jumping on. We had a lot of people watching most of this show. I understand that it's late on the East Coast for some of you. Thus is why we call this Taylor Primetime. Nick, you're so fantastic. Thanks for jumping on the show, man.
Thanks for having me.
We'd love to have you back again. We'll dive into some more lessons, but I truly think that, guys, we should make a theme of maybe one out of every 4 shows being very lesson driven. I like that idea.
Yeah, it's cool.
You have super inspired me to go play. I am definitely going to pick up a Detroit Tigers MLB Taylor Guitar GS Mini, and it's going to be awesome. However, they got beat last night. They got blanked by the Padres. I went to the game, but they got blanked. That's all. That's all I got to say.
Believe they lost. Guardians.
We're all checking scores right now, which is hysterical.
Yeah, I know,
Accurate.
Gabe. But here's the deal. I ended up sitting
Guardians are
next to
winning
the.
right now.
I ended up sitting next to the Tigers' assistant GM the whole game. Well, most of the game when he was sitting there. And we pitched a rookie yesterday who's incredible. He had 4 just stellar innings, and then he started to break down. But one of these days, the Tigers. That's all I got to say, Gabe. Okay?
I'm sure.
Here we go again, Mike.
Look, he could say the Guardians all he wants with the 4th best record in the American League. That's okay.
Second.
No. Orioles.
Oh, yeah,
They
that's
won
right.
tonight.
Orioles just bumped ahead. Anyway,
Oh,
okay.
okay.
2 minutes of sports. This thing's over. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us for another episode of Taylor Prime Time.
You guys rule.
Nicholas Veinoglou was our guest, and he still is our guest, but he's still on the screen. We talked about guitar improv, which he gave us some great little pointers on little things you can do to start playing out of the box which is fantastic. I love this theme. I loved this episode. Already got a lot of text messages and comments backdoor over here saying, wow, this was a good one. So, Nick, you are a gentleman for joining us. We appreciate you a ton. Gabe, it's always great to see you. Mike, I'll see you tomorrow. And everybody in the feed, we are grateful for you. We make this show happen because of you guys. And I do want to give a big shout out. Now that Jordan, who was on the last episode, is on our team, he is truly making Taylor Primetime a better show, a better place. I got a lot of people now who are helping get this thing moving. And I want to, from the bottom of my heart, thank you, Jordan. You did a stellar job. This show was fantastic. And let's keep them coming. You guys keep coming back. That's all we ask. We will talk to you guys soon. Nick, you want to play us out a little, maybe?
Oh, God.
I don't know.
Yes.
Noodle for a second, and then I'll just turn the feed
Give us
off
some
of the show.
improv.
Just make
Teach.
things up.
Improv.
I'll give it
See you
very
next time,
light.
nerds.
All right, everybody. Goodbye.